Hey, Composer Gloves here, and this is the 6th video in the Harmless from the Ground Up tutorial series. And today we are going to be looking at the filter section of Harmless. And to start off, we're going to really quick cover the basic kinds of filters. So, what a filter is if we were to open up an EQ. I know I have a lot of stuff on the screen right now, but we're only going to be looking at this section of Harmless, so don't worry too much about all the additional stuff. But we're going to open up the EQ, and the nice thing about the EQ, the parametric EQ too, is that it can show you all the basic filter shapes. So a filter basically is, let's load it up on the master. A filter is basically a volume switch for frequency, just like how an EQ is, except for a filter could go down to negative infinity. In some filters, but that's the big difference. This filter, the EQ2, goes down to negative 18 decibels, as you can see. So the difference is the amount of reduction that happens. And now filters can vary greatly, though. Filters can be very subtle and not even go down below negative 6 dB. It just depends. But if we take something and let's say we boost it, and if we were to, so on a filter, you could select the frequency that you want affected, and it will affect it according to the filter type. If there's a boost at wherever you select that frequency, this is called resonance. Now the resonance can be moved so it's not at where the frequency is selected, but generally when you move around a filter, there'll be some sort of resonance. So as I were selecting my frequency, this guy move up and down, changing the resonance. And so that is what that is. And if we right click, we could go to type, or type. And we have our first one's the low pass, and it, as you can see, it only lets the low frequencies through. And that's why it's called the low pass. And this little peak right here could be considered our resonance. So this would be the resonance. And if we were to take it down, and I'm doing that by scrolling my mouse wheel on top of it. And you notice we have this curve right here that cuts off, and this resonance and all these different things. Well, you could change that by going to order, and you go steep 8 and it makes it steeper, or maybe a gentle 8. And these all create different sounds when you move. So that is why there are different types of low pass filters. There might be like 3 or 4, and some of them might be even be combinations of filters. But let's cover the rest of the filter types first. So that's the first one. So it just turns the volume down on the high stuff before it reaches the low stuff. Then you have Bandpass, which only, as you can see by the shape here, only lets frequencies in the band actually get through. And you can change the width of the band and do all sorts of nifty things. The next one is high pass. It's the exact opposite of low. It only lets high frequencies through, so it turns down the low frequencies first. And so that's what that is. We have a band stop, which creates a hole as opposed to band pass, and this hole can be changed again by just scrolling your mouse wheel. And the width of this hole is referred to as Q. So if you go looking up stuff about filters, you might see this letter Q. That's what it's referring to. It's just referring to the size of the band. And this is also how some phasers work. They just do this. They use band stop filters. Some phasers use what's called an all pass filter, which is, it takes the signal at the frequency you've selected. So you select a frequency, and it will phase invert the signal. So that is how phaser works. Then we have, what the heck did I just select here? Oh, I should shelf. Okay, so the way a shelf works is it boosts. You know, it's pretty obvious. It can boost or cut everything from wherever you've selected. So we've selected right here at about 1,000 hertz, 1,070, and we're going to cut it by so much. That's what a shelf does. And then you have peaking, which is the most common thing in EQ. These aren't really filter types anymore. These are EQ shapes. And then you have high shelf, which is booster, cuts the high end from whatever frequency you select. And so you could combine these shapes in interesting ways. For example, we could have a band pass, but we could also have a low pass and we could have it change shape dynamically, and we could change the band. We could change this guy to be really crazy looking. And as we move through our shape, and if we can move them both at the same time, you could get some really dynamic sounds. So that is what the basic filter shapes do. And it's important to know this. So I'm going to use the Bandpass. So we're going to look at this guy right now. And this guy's going to become more important as we move along here. So I'm going to use the Bandpass to demonstrate this. So with nothing on, that's our frequency. That's what it looks like. When we turn on the Bandpass, you can see we have, as we select what frequency we want, it's also reflected here now. It's only taking those in the band, and you can clearly see that. You can turn, and so yeah, if we go to our low pass, it's very obviously represented. High pass, and then you have these special ones down here that are all just, they tell you what they are. Like this one's a phaser. So it's several notch filters. You can see the holes going through, like I said earlier. So that's pretty cool. And you have some other ones, and these are much more subtle effects. As you can see here, the filter is still taking effect, but it's only cutting the volume by a little bit. It's not by infinity. It doesn't get rid of it. And so that's the difference between these different kinds of filters here. Flat bandpass. So now let's talk about this thing right here. So this is the envelope, an envelope that controls your filter. Now we talked about envelopes in our last video, or the one, not on the last one. We talked about it on the one covering the this envelope up here, the volume envelope. Well, this one controls how much the filter has effect. So with we're going to turn ALT off for now. And that's just, I think it's alternative, adaptive, I don't know. And as we turn our attack up, so this controls the amount the envelope actually has an effect on our filter. And if you turn velocity sensitivity on, you hit your key harder or softer, it will respond accordingly. So if we turn it all the way on, now it has complete control over how our filter behaves on our sound. And you see we have a low attack time, a really long attack time. So it takes a long time for that filter to come on. But if we make it much faster, and then it goes straight to our decay. So if we turn our decay down too, it immediately takes effect. If we have our decay up, like you just saw, this is a really long decay, I'll speed it up. It will come on like so. So it behaves the exact same way this one does up here, except for its reference to the frequency. And you can see we can also change the shape here, and you can change the curve shape for the attack in the decay. So maybe we want our decay to come on, our attack to come on fast, and our decay to come on at a linear position. So we'll put it in the middle to be linear. You get some interesting results. Turn this on. And turn our decay up. So that's what those do. So let's set everything back, and what Alt does, right now we have it completely affecting the filter. And if we were to say the other side, this basically changes whether the filter starts on or off. So that starts it on. And we're going to turn our decay up because we have a weird envelope right now. And we're using a weird filter too. So let's go to a Bandpass. And right now we have exactly what we would expect, but it starts at the frequency we have selected here. And once your filter frequency passes a certain point, this thing will flip. It'll flip once it's so just so you know, I've noticed this. So now this side starts on when it's like all the way over here. But when it's over here, it starts. So this behaves differently according to where your filter is. So that's a need to know thing. So if we had something smaller like this, it only comes up to our peak. But if we wanted to go all the way through the entire motion, just turn Alt on. It goes through the entire thing. So that's really useful. So we're going to turn our envelope off for now, because that's what that does. We're all done learning about that. And now we're going to take a look at this section right here. So there's a whole bunch of different buttons, and we just talked about all the different filter types. So we don't need to cover that. You have these you have this thing called res, which stands for resonance, and we talked a little bit about that. So first, let's cover this LFO. So this LFO is linked to this LFO down here, which controls the speed. And so if we turn our speed way up and we turn our LFO on, and this behaves the same way as the Alt. So one controls the entire spectrum, the entire range of our frequency motion, and the other one, and that's what it's automating, is the frequency up and down. And the other one controls only up to where we've set it. So that's good to know. And we're going to turn that off. So that's pretty much what that does. You have key track. So I earlier kind of hinted at key track, but I didn't give it like a real definition. What key tracking does is it makes a filter. So if you have our filter all the way on and we key track it all the way on, and let's choose a low pass and apply it all the way. You see our higher frequencies are getting through, and even more, and the filter comes off. And if we were to turn it the other way, our filter stays consistent with the note that we're hitting. So that's what key track does. It follows your keyboard movement and applies a change as you move up in notes. And so the lower you go, the more this takes effect. And that is what that does. All right, now let's move on to the width. So it's really obvious. You remember Q, what I said about Q earlier? It's pretty much that. So if we have a bandpass, and this is our band, you can see it taking effect. Here it is. We can change it to be really small, or only that big, tiny thing, or we can make it big. And that is what the width does. It just changes that attack space. It behaves differently on low pass and stuff. If you want to change the curve of how hard your low pass attacks, that's how you can do it. And that's pretty much it for width. There are these two modes down here, octave and hertz. And this has to do with the way frequencies are distributed. If we were to open up, let's open up something. If we were to open up a citrus, we have the same thing right here, octave and hertz. Let's go to a default on citrus. Okay, so we have this. And let's say we wanted to change the frequency. Well, if we were doing it according to the ratio setting, which is not the same as octave, but if we were to do that, we'd move it up 4, we'd double it, and by doubling it, we'd get an octave up. If we wanted to change it just a little bit, but keep it consistent, you could go up in hertz. So it's just a different way of moving around the scale. Now this one's octave and hertz. They are slightly different. So, and this controls the setting that our filter uses to select the frequency. Now this, I recommend just setting this by ear as you go along. But it's selecting according to, I believe this is a logarithmic scale, and this is not a logarithmic scale. So if this is a log right now, but if we set it to linear, our sound would look like this. And this is on Hertz mode, if we turn it, so just so you know, sometimes it makes a big difference, sometimes it doesn't make any difference at all. And then over here we have resonance, offset, and oscillator. And what resonance does is, as we talked about, it's that boost wherever the frequency selection is. So as we select a frequency, it goes like that. And you'll notice that it also has an octave in Hertz mode. So if we turn on our resonance here, you'll actually see it get much darker wherever the resonance is, or brighter. And you can see it follows our cutoff around, and it really boosts the volume right there. Now, there's different shapes which you could choose here. There's like this double cone, and you can see there's like a thing right there, and there's also there's a boost. There's two boosts, and there's well, which creates sort of a hole. And so if we were to change the offset, we could change how far off from this frequency selection this resonance occurs. So if we turn it down, you can see it happens a ways down from our frequency selection. And if we turn it up, you can see it move around as we turn it down and up. So that is a really nice feature. And you have this Oscs, this oscillator. This introduces another tone at wherever you've set the resonance to come in at. We're going to change it back to classic. So you can see that tone come right on in. We're going to turn our offset off so it appears where our selection is. So you could get some interesting results there. And you can turn it down quite a bit. And you could get some cool sounds that way. And amongst the last things here is motion. And so motion is the resonance only turns on when there's filter motion. And the same goes for the oscillator movement. So, and the same goes for the oscillator tone that's introduced. So you can see it disappears as soon as we stop moving. Go to adaptive. It will change our resonance peak's shape. So what the heck does that mean? Well, it's something that you really set more by ear, but let's just give it a listen real quick. And let's take down our oscillator and turn our resonance up. So you can hear it there. So this is one of those things that you sort of just listen for. It's just changing how it behaves. And that is the filter section. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. And let's really quick make a sound. Because, well, why not, you know? We'll make a bass sound because I love bass. I realize I make a lot of bass sounds. But those are the sounds I love to make. Let's create an automation clip. Let's automate the resonance. And let's automate the offset. What the heck, you know? And we'll just make a sound something like this. Oh man, this is a pretty cool sound actually. Let's do this. And we'll move the resonance. Maybe not the resonance. And we'll make it, we'll do some EQing. Leave that off. Yeah, I mean, this type of a sound would be more of a one moment sound instead of a huge thing. Whoops, didn't want to do that. You could just go through and make adjustments, maybe even make it lower. And just maybe distort that, add some EQ, and fit it into your track, and it would sound like a really nice bass. If you have any questions, again, just let me know. And have a blessed day.